Today we're going to be trying to implement the backend and the front end of a chat application in 30 minutes. I got the inspiration from watching this YouTube video a while ago that was stuck in my watch later list for a couple of weeks. And when I finally got the time to watch it, it showed how to build a quick chat application using React gifted chat. This guy showed how to do it in 30 minutes or less. So I thought to myself whether I can do the same. How quickly can I build the Android group chat app using CometChat that I found recently that I'll be using for backend, and this second library for the UI that's called ChatKit. So let's get started and try to do this in 30 minutes or less. I'm starting with an empty Android project, and it's going to be called Fast Android Chat, whatever. Let's hit finish, and that will create a new project. In the meantime, we can go here and check out the libraries that we're going to be using. This is CometChat, and if we go here, we will be using CometChat Pro, and we need to have the documentation. And also, I have already logged in, and we'll be using 1.8 version 1.8 because version 2 is still in beta phase. So already have my project set up. I mean, I've registered and logged in and created an app, which now I have here, and these are my API keys that I'm going to be using to actually implement the chat. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is, of course, sign up for CometChat and do all that. After that, we need to go to the Android SDK bit and follow along and just add CometChat to our project. Okay, so why is this not in full screen? Okay, there it is. Okay, cool. So let's see here. Let's just add CometChat real quick. This is project level. We need to add this bit. Project level, build Gradle. I'm going to be using a lot of shortcuts, so I'll try to explain as I'm using them. This is Shift, like double tap Shift, and then you can type in a name of the file that you want to go to, like build Gradle. And here's the other build Gradle that we don't need. Shift escape is to kill that. We don't need these tests. We're going to get rid of those. And let's see, we need to add this to repositories of project level. Okay, so that's the other build Gradle. Repositories, it's there. Now we need to add this line in our app level module there. Now let's see, we need to add this in the default config part, which is here, default config. Let's add it at the end. Now we need to add this to the Android tag, which is Android. It's here. Let's add it again to the end. We need to use Java 1.8. And that should be it for CometChat. And now we need to initialize it, which we're going to do in our main activity. Let's go to main activity and let's call a method init CometChat. And I like to write the name of the method, then hit Alt Enter and get the Android Studio to help me out. Okay. Of course, we need to sync Gradle first in order to have CometChat included. And as for the app ID, we're going to extract all of those constants into a constants class. Let's create a new package called utils, for example. That's where we're going to keep our constants. And the shortcut is Alt Insert for Windows, and for Mac, I think it's Command N. I used to have a Mac, so I don't remember all the shortcuts that well. Let's call this constants. And here we're going to create a public static final string app ID, which is going to equal, well, app ID. This is my app ID. And I'm going to duplicate that, Control D for duplicate. If you don't have anything selected, it's just Control D. If you select something, it'll just duplicate that bit. And we also need the API key. Here's that. Let's call this API key. Okay, paste that in there. And Now in the main activity, CometChat is no longer in red. That's cool. So constants, come on, Android Studio, constants dot what was supposed to be here. Let's just go back here and see it's app ID. So yes, app ID. Okay. On success, on error, we're not going to log anything because it'll just succeed, hopefully. Okay, and the other thing that we need to add that we're going to be using for the UI is this library. It's called ChatKit, and it's really great. It offers a lot of things out of the box as for the UI, while CometChat is for the backend and everything related to that. Okay, so let's just add this line. Okay, they haven't even updated. This should be saying implementation. So let's paste that in here. Swap this with implementation. Android Studio is not helping us. Never mind, sync now. Okay, and while that's syncing, we can go and see how to implement the logging in with CometChat. Okay, we need to have the user ID and the API key for that. We already have the API key, so as for the user ID, we're just gonna present the user with a simple login form, if you can call it like that. I'm just gonna have an edit text that's gonna match the parent, wrap content, collapse empty tag. The shortcut is Alt Enter for everything, literally. Let's say top to top of parent. Let's put that at top. We need to give it some ID. So let's say user ID edit text. And the hint is gonna be hint enter your user ID. Okay, and we also need a button. So I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate this and then make it a button. Button is gonna be called submit button, and it's gonna be to top of, we can change the constraint to be top to bottom of user ID edit text. And we won't have a tip, we will have a text. Text will be log in. Okay, great. Now that we have that, we are going to copy this. No, I wanted to control tab. Control tab is to move within the app. So let's call a method init views, for example, init views, and create that. And we're going to have this edit text there. So edit text called like this equals find by ID r.id.this. Duplicate that. Second, I didn't even have to really duplicate, but never mind. Button. What did we call this? I usually like to have the ID match the name, but it doesn't have to, the name of the variable. Submit button, okay, and on submit, we're going to say set on click listener, okay, and on click, we're going to log in, right? So let's call this method and paste that in there. User ID is going to be user edit text dot get text string. I'm not going to be doing any validations, of course, in your real life app. You should do that, but that's just a couple extra seconds. API key is going to be constant.api key, and that should be it. On success, we will transfer the user to the next activity, and there won't be any need for on error, hopefully. Okay, let's replace that with a lambda. It's just nicer to look at now. Okay, so let's create the next screen. Next screen is going to be called group list activity. No, not a new class, but a new activity, because we want Android to do most of the things for us. So let's do empty activity. It's going to be called group list activity, and that's it. Okay, now I want to show you a little shortcut for creating a starter intent. You just type starter here, and Android Studio, oh my God, starter, come on, Android Studio starter, there it is. And you hit enter and you get this little method that will help you start the activity. It's just it saves some time. Control Y to kill this line because we don't need it. And now from the main activity, we're going to say main activity, or we can call a method like redirect to main screen. Okay, create the method within main activity. Let's rename it Shift F6, redirect to group list screen, and let's say group list dot start with this as the context, and that's it. We will be on our way. Let's install this on the emulator and test this out whether the login works. As for the CometChat here, we have the superhero 1. They have already created for us 5 users, sample users. Those have the user ID superhero 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to be using those to test our app. Later, we will come to the sending of message, but for now, let's open up groups as we will be fetching a list of groups and displaying that list. So displaying a list, then opening one particular group, and then chatting within that group. So, okay, this is not yet installed, so it's still building. In the meantime, we can start implementing group list activity. So here we will be using a recycler view, and we need to add that to our build Gradle, and I have it here. Let's paste recycler view, and also I remembered we will be using Picasso for image loading. So for those little avatars next to the chat bubble. So I'm going to add that here immediately, and let's hit sync now. And in the meantime, our app got built. So let's type superhero1 and log in. And we should be, okay, this is our group list screen. So CometChat initialization and login has worked. So let's get back here. And okay, so Gradle has finished building. So let's use the recycler view here. And we're going to have the width match parent, height also match parent. And let's collapse that and give it the ID, groups, recycler view. View. Okay, and now we're going to set it up and have it display a list of groups. So let's go to the group list activity, and we're gonna first fetch a list of groups. Okay, so Gradle has finished building, so now let's use the recycler view here to display a list of groups with match parent, height match parent. That works. Let's close the tag, collapse. ID, let's give it the ID, let's say groups recycler view. And now let's go back to our group list activity, and we're going to get a list of groups. Let's see how to do that. Let's take this. We'll create a group request. So let's call the method get group list, for example. Alt enter, create method. Okay. We don't need a limit, honestly. So we're going to get rid of this line. And now finally, we need to say, we need to create a groups request and fetch the groups. So let's do that. Group request fetch. Okay. Oops. Alt enter to include everything. Alt enter, import class. Pay attention to import the right one. This is the one that we want from CometChat. And again, we won't be doing any logging, but we will actually just call update UI with list. And let's hit Alt Enter, create method, create it in the group list activity. That's the parameters, that's all fine. Get rid of this. Okay, update UI will essentially set up the recycler view. So let's say recycler view groups recycler view equals find by ID r.id groups recycler view. And we need the adapter for this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste the adapter that I've already created in order to avoid losing, precious time. But you know how the adapters are implemented. Let's create a package called adapters. And let's create a Java class called groups adapter. Okay, and we're going to just paste the already implemented version of this. Let's check out what we have here. We have the regular recyclerview adapter. This is our view holder. And the view holder just has a text view and the container, and we'll just create that one because we're missing it. Create layout resource. Okay. And now I'm going to also paste that one. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste the already implemented one to save a little bit of time. And it basically is just literally a layout containing a group name text view, which will display the group's name. And inside of the groups adapter, we will now have everything not turn red. And the only thing that we need to fix now is that when clicking on a container, we want to open the chat activity. So let's create a chat activity. And let's create activity, empty activity, call it chat activity. And again, for this one, we will create a starter. And for this one, we will actually need to pass something via the intent, and that will be the group ID, because we need to know which group we're sending and receiving the messages to and from, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a constant called group ID, and we will pass the group ID here, string group ID. Let's pass that in there, and now let's create constant field group ID. Okay, and we will fetch it later. So inside of the groups adapter, okay, now this is no longer red. Okay, cool. So now let's go to the group list activity and set up the recycler view with the adapter. So groups recycler view, we need to set the layout manager, linear layout manager, this as the context. It's immediately vertical, so we don't need to specify that. And now we're going to go ahead and say groups adapter equals new groups adapter, and we will pass in the list of groups and this as the context. As for the groups adapter implementation, it's fairly simple. It just inflates the layout and it binds each view. You already have seen it 1,000 times if you've done Android for a while. Let me just get rid of that. And basically just binds by setting the name of the group to the text view. Okay, group list activity. Now let's just connect these two groups, recyclerview.set adapter to groups adapter. Okay, and now we should be able to see that if we run the app. And in the meantime, we can take a glance at this ChatKit that we're going to be using. So we need to use messages list and message input. Message input we're going to use for inputting a message, right? And message list for displaying the messages. Okay, so this is the most critical part, connecting CometChat and ChatKit, which we're going to be doing when implementing for let's add this to our build Gradle. No, not build Gradle. Let's add that to our activity chat activity. Yes. Okay. Our input will be at the bottom, right? So we'll say bottom to bottom of parent. String input hint can be enter your message. And we can say, okay, we don't need any other constraint because the width is match parent. Okay, and also we will add message list. That'll take up every bit of space that's left. So Let's add that in here, and it'll be match parent. The height won't be match parent, it'll be 0, as we will give it constraints. So top to top of parent and bottom to top of input, right? So now I will take up top to top of parent and bottom to top of input. That makes sense. Now it'll take up everything between the top of the parent and the input text field. So okay, and now let's see whether this is built. Superhero 1. We should be able to see a list of one group. Yeah, here it is, Comic Heroes Hangout. That's the pre-created group by CometChat. So if we tap on that, we will enter the chat activity, which is not done yet. So let's get back to doing it. Okay, so basically what we need to do here is let's set an input listener on this input message view, whatever. Let's call it init views again. Alt enter, create method. Okay. While input view is going to be, let's call, what was the class called? It was called message input. So, message input view equals find view by ID input. It was called. Okay, and we will not add the message immediately, but we will do that later. We will call send message with input dot to string. Create method, chat activity, send message, message, and let's replace this with a lambda. Okay, so now we need to go to CometChat documentation and check out how to send a message. So let's go to messaging and send a message to group. So basically we need to create a new text message of the text message. Receiver ID is going to be our group ID, which we will create as a class variable. So private string group ID. And here before initializing the views, we're going to say intent equals get intent if it's not null, and it should not be null. If intent is not null, we're going to say group ID equals intent get string extra constants group ID. Okay, so here the receiver ID will be our group ID, so group ID, and CometChat constants message type text will be our message type, and CometChat constants dot receiver type group as the receiver type, and here as the message text we will just say message. Okay, and if that succeeds, we want to call a method called add message with text message, and let's create a method called add message in chat activity, and on error we will omit that for now. The thing that we need to do now is take a look at message list. Let's see. It needs an adapter, and we need to create a bridge between the iMessage interface and the text message class from CometChat. So let's do that. We will create a package called models, and inside of that package we will create a class called message wrapper. You can call it whatever you want. It will implement iMessage from ChatKit, and for that we need to add a couple of methods, and it'll have a private field of message or text message from CometChat. Okay, so let's create a constructor. Again, the shortcut is Alt Insert constructor, select that, and here for the ID, we'll just say message get message ID. For text, we'll just say message.getText. For date created, we will just say return new date with message.getDate or get sent at, yeah, get sent at, and we need to multiply this by 1,000 because this is in seconds and we need to get milliseconds. For the user, we will actually need to create another model, which will again create a bridge between the user from CometChat and the user from ChatKit. So let's create user wrapper. That one will implement user from ChatKit, and for that we need to implement a couple of methods. Get the ID, that will be we need to add the field private user, and we need to that's CometChat Pro user, and alt insert constructor. Okay, and for the ID we'll say user.id, get user ID, that's right, user.name. And here for the avatar, we will just pass in user get avatar. Okay, and now in the message wrapper, we need to say return new user wrapper, and we need to pass in the user, and that will be message dot get user or sender. What is it called? It's called get sender. Okay. And now finally, let's go back here and let's see what we need to do with these classes. Okay, here's the author. They called it author, but we can call it whatever we want. Here we need to create a messages list adapter. Okay. We can do that in init views. Is that in there? And here, this will be of message wrapper. And sender ID will be our ID. So let's create a local variable, sender ID, which will be equal to CometChat.getLoggedInUser.get user ID. The ChatKit will use that to differentiate between our messages and the messages from someone else. And as for the image loader, let's check what that is. Click here to learn more. And it just uses an image loader to load the avatar images next to the thing. So we're going to copy this, paste in here, image loader, and Picasso has been updated, so it's called get now, and we don't need to pass anything. And it's complaining here because the method is also updated. So this is how it looks now. So we're just gonna copy this. The documentation for the ChatKit library obviously hasn't been updated in a while. Get rid of that. And we can also replace this with a lambda. Okay. And messages list, we haven't still created that one. So let's say messages list, and that'll be the messages list. Let's just check one more time. Messages list. Yep. Okay. So now we will just create the adapter to be a field because we will need to access it later. No, create field, messages list adapter of iMessage. Okay. Add message. Let's go back to, we don't need this anymore. Okay, now, okay. Here's adding the new messages part. So let's see, adapter add to start. This will add the message at the bottom, which is kind of counterintuitively named, but whatever. Let's use that. Add to start. I'm not even going to copy. I'm just going to say adapter add to start text message. But that won't work because we need to add our wrapper message or message wrapper of this text message. And the second parameter is whether it should scroll down, and we are going to scroll down. Okay. And now let's see what else we need to do. This one is for adding a list of messages. We'll add that later. So one more thing that we need to do is here we need to add a listener for the incoming messages. So let's scroll down and find that part, receive messages. Here it is. So add message listener. We need to add this. Let's say add listener. Listener ID can be some unique ID. And this line, and this line, we don't need them. We will only be handling text messages because we're not doing media or custom messages in this tutorial. So let's just call add message, text message, and that should be it. When a message comes, we will add it. And let's try this. Let's install, and I will launch a new emulator also, so we can check out whether it works on two emulators. And while my emulators are launching, we can take a look at the next thing that we're going to be doing. We are receiving a message. So one more thing that we want to add is getting a list of messages, like the previous messages that had been sent before we actually entered the chat. So we will fetch the messages. That's it. We will create a message request. And we can use set group ID. That's for getting the group messages. And let's go back to the chat. I will call that method here, and it'll be called fetch previous messages, and create that method, message request. And the group ID will be our group ID. And let's see, we need to call, we can add a bunch of flags or parameters. We don't need any of those. We'll just call fetch previous to get all the previous messages. So message request dot fetch previous, pass in the callback that it needs, and we will get a list of base message. Base message can be a text message or a media message or a custom message. We will actually need to only do the text messages. So I'm gonna go ahead and say add messages and pass in a list base messages. And now we're gonna create this method to ignore everything other than text messages. So let's say for each base message of base messages. Scroll up a little bit. Whoops. Here we are. If message instance of text message, in that case, we will cast that and add it to the message list. So let's say add message new. No. We're going to be using the other method now, which takes adapter dot add to end, takes a list of messages, and we're going to create our list here. Even better, let's say list, and the second parameter is reverse. That's true because the messages should be in reversed order, right? Create local variable list of iMessage, and let's cut this, paste here, equals new array list. And now we're going to say list dot add new message wrapper of text message. We need to cast our message into text message. Well, that's it. So if our message is of text message type, we will just cast it to text message and add it to the list of messages. Okay, in the meantime, our emulators have both launched, so let's Oh, yeah, this is the new one. So let's install on that one also. And let's say superhero 1 from this emulator. Enter. Let's say try something. Okay, cool. The message actually goes, but let's see whether the second guy received it. So superhero 2. Okay, there. Okay, so the emulator on the left-hand side doesn't have the version with fetching the history, but while the new one does. Okay, so it's actually fetching the history, which is cool. So let's try now whether it works in real time. Cool, and it does. Yay. And if I now go back on this one, leave the chat and come back, it won't display anything because we have installed on this one before we have added the history. And if I go back on this one and come back, it will add all the messages, right? So awesome. Now the only thing awesome is also displayed here. So now this is the old one. Let's reinstall on it and see whether it will also work there. Hopefully it will. I mean, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't because it works on the right hand side one. Okay, we can even log in as some other user here to test it out. Let's say superhero 3. Log in, enter the chat. It fetches the history. Hey guys. And Spider-Man, that's Spider-Man. Okay, well, it works, which is cool. So now let's sign off. That's it from me, guys. I hope you like this tutorial. We have covered some pretty important concepts in CometChat and ChatKit. You've seen, I think we should go one more time over the most important part, which is making them work together, which is done with user wrapper and message wrapper. Basically, ChatKit has given us an interface that we need to implement to tell it how to display things about our user, how to differentiate users using their ID, getting their name to display, and getting the URL to their avatar, right? While message wrapper does the same thing for the message. It needs the ID to differentiate between the messages, the text to display, the user to load his name and image, and the date created just to sort them and display the dates, as you can see here, November and 1342 and so on, That's it from me, and thank you for listening, and goodbye.